Human Rights Watch is built around individual philanthropy. As a matter of principle, we don't take any government money because we report on governments and therefore have to be independent of governments. If we had to worry about, oh my goodness, if we put out that critical report, we may not get our next paycheck, we would immediately lose our credibility. So we need the kind of independence that individual philanthropy provides. But we now are devoting very significant effort to building philanthropic support in a range of other countries. And India is a natural partner in that effort because, first of all, just by virtue of its size and its global prominence, it's such a key player. It also, really does have enormous philanthropic potential, given the growth of the Indian economy, the emergence of individuals who really have the means to play a significant philanthropic role. When you talk to people about their philanthropy, it's always easier, I find, for philanthropists to enter the philanthropic realm in areas where they're delivering direct services. On the one hand, there's a tangibility to what they're doing. I just purchased X number of blankets, or I just provided an education for Y number of children. But there also is, it's in a sense less threatening. Human rights involves standing up to governments. It requires challenging governments. And philanthropists can be nervous about that if they fear governmental retaliation. That said, it does take a certain courage because, particularly in a place like India today where we see the government sometimes still willing to retaliate against NGOs that they're not happy with. You're seeing this right now around the nuclear controversy and the government kind of lashing out at people for receiving foreign funds to pursue what they think is a foreign agenda, even though, frankly, it just reflects quite expected discontent at the local level. That kind of governmental reaction people are often fearful of, and it may impede philanthropy, but we find that that's a small impediment, and that very quickly potential donors are willing to get past that, and that the growing numbers creates a growing sense of safety and a growing ease. I think one concern is that the Indian government hasn't really made up its mind whether it wants to encourage philanthropy in the human rights realm. It still, I think, fears that human rights means Kashmir or means dangerous topics that it would really rather not have anybody talk about. But in fact, human rights is so much broader than that. It involves issues of child welfare, of women's welfare, of the right to health, as well as more traditional concerns, fighting torture or fighting excessive use of force by security forces. So there are a range of issues that are important issues. And I think over time the Indian government will recognize that. But for now it is taking still a very, I would say, narrow perspective on this. It is not, certainly is not encouraging foreign contributions in this area. And even domestically, I don't sense, encouragement of this as a form of philanthropy. It ranges over a broad area. On the one hand, we are looking at issues that people might say are traditional concerns. So we're looking at torture by the police. We're looking at the excessive use of force by security agents, whether it's on the Bangladeshi border or in the Naxalite conflict. But we're also looking at a range of issues that involve social and economic rights, which are an element of the human rights agenda. So, for example, even in the Naxalite conflict, we're trying to protect children from being recruited as soldiers. We're trying to protect schools from being used either as bases by the Indian police or as points, as targets by the Naxalites, who frequently are targeting schools, sometimes because the police are barracking there, but often simply because the school is seen as a symbol of the state and therefore the Naxalites attack it. So protecting against that is key if we're going to encourage education in the areas where the Naxalites are finding their base. I find that there are a number of things that philanthropists can do that are very helpful. First of all, just by virtue of who they are, they often are connected. They know people. And they can help open doors, whether it's in government or in other networks where simply by virtue of who they come in contact with in their day-to-day lives, they will be able to facilitate access in a way that a local NGO may not easily be able to achieve. And so, I think it's very worth just sitting down with an NGO whom a philanthropist would like to support and say, look, here's my network. This is who I know. Can any of these people be helpful to you? That can be of enormous assistance. Second, there is a great need for public education. And a typical philanthropist is not going to go stand on the street corner and engage in kind of mass education. But there's very important work that can be done by, for example, just holding an introductory meeting in one's living room and inviting 30 friends to learn about the work of a local NGO. That spreads awareness about the problem, it spreads awareness about the possible solutions, and it also, frankly, builds a network of potential supporters, financial supporters, for the NGO as well. So I think that it's not just about money, it's also about who one knows, where one has access, and making those linkages between the important work of an NGO, which a philanthropist supports, and the broader non-financial network that philanthropist might have.